From coast to coast, shore to shore, border to border, and all over the world, it's time to applause music. Jan and Paul Crouch were the faces of the Trinity Broadcasting Network, the world's biggest Christian TV network that the IRS considers a non-profit. They were buried with a lot of lights and a wake that could fit a small city. Even though TBN had more than 2 billion watchers, Paul and Jan were still the most popular hosts. Their loyal fans kept giving them money. At its peak, TBN was giving Jesus $200 million a year without having to pay taxes on it. On TBN Stein, Paul and Jan bought expensive clothes, private jets, his and hers mansions, and lots of other nice things. The network even paid for a makeover for them. So no one could find out what was really going on behind the scenes. They put their kids and grandchildren in high-level roles at TBN so they could stay safe. Their shock when one of their own found out they were stealing from the church was so great. Suddenly, America's good Christian family was split down the middle, and those cute faces when they were on TV turned mean when they weren't. The whole world saw their failure play out in several court cases and was shocked that these people, who said they were called by God, always put money before family. The FBI was looking into Paul Crouch for ties to organized crime, foreign money schemes, and even arms deals with the Palestinian Liberation Organization. Lawsuits were the last thing Paul and Jan Crouch were worried about. Spy stories, love, and crazy affairs caught on camera are told in this story. It's about getting famous on TV and family secrets. This is Paul and Jan Crouch's Rise and Fall on TBN. Music. Before we start, Delete Me, the company that sponsored this movie, has a quick word. Let's talk about something scary. Brokers of data. Data providers are businesses that gather a lot of information that can be used to identify people. People who want to sell our personal information to anyone who will pay will put our old and new addresses, names, and other information together. This puts us at risk for identity theft or worse. At the moment, there are no federal privacy rules that say how our data can be used or shared. And in 2022, people between the ages of 30 and 39 were most likely to have their identities stolen. It makes sense since a lot of our private data is shared online without our permission. But it can take a lot of time and worry to try to get rid of your name, age, address, phone number, pastes, and the names of family members. With Delete Me, you can get rid of all the websites that have your private information in minutes instead of spending hours finding them all and requesting that they take it down. This is a great service called Delete Me. It will find and delete your personal information from hundreds of data broker websites. It will also keep looking for new data and delete that too. Delimi checks all of the top data broker websites, and in the first 2 years, they find and get rid of over 2,000 pieces of personal data for each user. They've already deleted more than 100 million pieces of data for their clients. Join Deletime is where you should go if you want to get your personal information taken off of web search results. www.notthegoodgirl.com. Delete Me is giving all of my viewers 20% off their privacy plans if they use my code NOTTHEGOOD. That's joined me again. com@notthegood. Let's watch the movie again. Paul's childhood. Paul Franklin Crouch was born in St. Joseph, Missouri on March 30th, 1934. His family had a strong Christian religion, and he was the youngest of 3 boys. He was born to Andrew and Sarah Crouch, who were both Assemblies of God preachers. Their parents were also missionaries. They tried to live by the Bible and share it with everyone they could. From the back of their car, it looks like most of their tasks were in the U.S. They believed that God could heal them, that they could speak in tongues, that they could be saved through Jesus Christ, and that they would live forever. Andrew and Sarah talked about how they were sure that their God could do miracles and that he had a reason for every bad thing that happened. Even though they had a lot of faith, it was hard for them to figure out what Andrew's quick death meant when Paul was only 7. This meant that Sarah had to raise 3 boys with almost no money and only the help of her parents. This event could have been enough to make some Christians question their faith. Paul, on the other hand, thought that death was a gift from God and that his father had been taken back to heaven. He was very interested in sharing the word of God from a very young age, just like his parents and grandparents did. He did pick a different way, though: radio. Not long after Andrew died, Paul told his mom that he was going to become a radio show and spread the word. When he was done with high school, he went to Central Bible College in Springfield, Missouri. In order to train the next generation of teachers and missionaries, the Assemblies of God built CBC. He earned his degree in religion in 1955. But the most important thing that changed his life wasn't the classes or the license. It was John, a girl, the early years of Janice Wendell. Jan Bethany was born in New Brockton, Alabama, on March 14, 1938. Her life was based on faith because she was the daughter of a preacher. Edgar Bethany, her father, was a preacher with the Assemblies of God, and the first president of Southeastern University in Florida. Paul had a rough childhood, but Jan's was much more steady and fortunate. Paul's family had to deal with the hardships and uncertainty of missionary life. Jan, on the other hand, grew up in a well-known ministry family that had status, money, and a clear road in front of her. She grew up in the Deep South as the daughter of a preacher. People had clear ideas about how she should act, look, and what her future role would be. Jan learned from a young age how to act in public and how to seem like the perfect Christian woman who is helpful and kind. It was understood that for a girl like her, the best thing that could happen was to marry a preacher and have a child with one. But Jan wasn't like the children of other preachers. She knew that being in the background would never make her happy. She was okay with being a mom, but she also wanted to be famous and have her name on signs. When Jan was a teenager, everyone who knew her knew she liked theater. She would put on a lot of makeup and style her bleach blonde hair exactly when the other girls at church were dressed more modestly. Jan made sure she made an impact, and it was already clear that she wasn't going to be happy just following along. Jan knew that she had to leave her parents' rule and go her own way if she wanted to live her life the way she wanted to. She started going to Evangel University in Springfield after high school. It was right next door to where Paul was going, to school at CBC. Jan and Paul started dating when they were in college, but they met years earlier at a church camp in Rapid City. Paul wrote about that in an email from 2007 first meeting, saying, quote, "Heads turned, especially the boys, as a slight beautiful angel seemed more to glide than walk toward the front of the auditorium. Head down, timid, it seemed to me. Yet the bright red dress contrasted with the retiring, even shy demeanor of this stunning young lady." End quote. After that first meeting, Paul learned that Jan was enrolled to study at Evangel. He took it as a sign that his God had brought them together. A few months later, Jan invited Paul to watch her sing at a church event, and as they say, the rest is history. 2 years later, in 1957, they tied the knot. By then, Paul was already well into his broadcasting career after helping to build a college radio station. In the same year he and Jan got married, Paul became a radio announcer at KRSD in South Dakota. It was clear that Paul had the X factor for radio with his polished voice, energy, and the ability to make people feel like he was speaking directly to them. It wasn't long before he was promoted to program director and then manager of KRSD's TV division. In Paul Gets His Start, in TV 1961, Paul was working for the Assemblies of God organization. They directed him to establish their TV and broadcasting department in Burbank, California. The network produced low-budget films which were focused on church missions and audiovisual materials which were sold and distributed through the AOG Church Network. Over the next 7 years, Paul also managed various religious radio stations in California. Meanwhile, Jan hadn't lost her desire to become a star in her own right. She was waiting for her moment to shine. But first, there was a more traditional role she needed to play. While Paul was making a name for himself in broadcasting, Jan gave Paul and Jan start a family birth to the couple's 2 sons, Paul Jr. and Matthew. In the early 1970s, Paul, Jim, and Tammy Faye enter the picture, and Jan crossed paths with Jim and Tammy Faye Baker, who were riding a wave of success with their 700 Club program airing on the Christian Broadcasting Network. Although Paul